Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. Since last season, player Jonathan Kuminga has been unhappy with the Warriors. He complained about coach Steve Kerr, who left him out of the rotation in some games. Kuminga is wanted by other teams and he will probably leave the Warriors. There could be a favorite to sign Kuminga this summer. The talk of Jonathan Kuminga leaving the Golden State Warriors this summer has been one of the biggest conversations surrounding this team ever since their playoff run officially came to a close. Now, there may be a favorite to sign Kuminga away from the Bay Area, the Chicago Bulls. It wasn't a totally spectacular regular season for Kuminga in 2024-25, but the playoffs were where his talent truly began to shine. In 8 playoff games in April and May, JK matched his regular season scoring average of 15.3 on solid shooting splits, including 40% from three-point range. Obviously, teams around the association are always looking for players who can thrive in a playoff environment, and Kuminga's performance in this year's postseason seemed to make a lot more teams interested in the idea of potentially going out and signing him between now and October. Enter the Bulls. Although they made some improvements toward the end of the regular season, Chicago is still stuck in something of an identity crisis. They made the wise choice to move on from DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine so that they could seek a new direction, but they still didn't want to bottom out and tank. There has been plenty of talk about the Bulls signing Kuminga. Again, even though they did finally take a step or two forward, the Bulls still seem to be stuck in the middle, and they're going to want to change that as quickly as they can. They may opt to pivot toward youth and developing young talent, and bringing in Kuminga would be an excellent way for them to achieve that. Jonathan is set to become a restricted free agent when the free agency period begins at the end of June. He just finished up playing on his 4-year, $24 million rookie contract, and will likely be seeking a larger payday. Much of what happens with Kuminga will likely hinge on what the Warriors want to do going forward as well. They'll likely want to try to get one more championship out of Stephen Curry while keeping the other 2 core pieces around in Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. Should they invest heavily in veterans and put a lesser priority on youth, it would be much easier to see Jonathan Kuminga head out the door this summer. But even if they do try their best to keep JK, the Bulls may very well be the team that comes swooping in with a big offer. Warriors' next move is painfully clear if surging Jonathan Kuminga rumors prove true. A couple of role players may have to be sacrificed. While there's still plenty to play out over the coming weeks, there's a growing sentiment that Jonathan Kuminga could return to the Golden State Warriors next season. CBA restrictions make it difficult for the franchise to get proper value back in a sign-and-trade, with Monty Poole of NBC Sports Bay Area recently stating that the Warriors very likely will find a way to hang on to JK. If Golden State do bring Kuminga back on a big new contract as a restricted free agent, their flexibility to go out and make other notable moves this offseason will be incredibly limited. If that's the case, then it's going to become painfully obvious what their next move should actually be. Moses Moody and Buddy Hield should be floated as trade candidates. While adding another wing/forward type may be less of a concern if Kuminga comes back, the Warriors will still need to address their center rotation this summer. Given the obvious need for a starting big man, Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the front office may have to look beyond aging veterans like Brook Lopez or Al Horford on a minimum contract. Golden State's pathway to acquiring a quality starting center may come through putting multiple players on the trade block, and most notably the mid-tier contracts of Moses Moody and Buddy Hield. Moody is starting his 3-year, $37.5 million contract and will make $11.6 million next season, while Hield will be on the 2nd year of his deal at $9.6 million. Combining these salaries, a couple of smaller contracts and some draft capital could still get the Warriors the offensively skilled, difference-making center they need to become true contenders next season. They'll also have to be careful though, such as the lack of three-point shooting currently on the roster. Hield is easily Golden State's 2nd most dangerous perimeter sniper behind Stephen Curry, while Moody started to flourish this season in a valuable 3-and-D role. If the Warriors are going to move on from one or both players, they'll have to bring back just as much shooting in the trade or through alternative free agency moves. This exemplifies the issue Golden State has in trying to address multiple elements, some of which may only be deepened by Kuminga's return. Acquiring a versatile stretch 5 should be the first priority though, with the Warriors having frustratingly experienced a carousel of different starting centers over the past couple of seasons. Golden State Warriors host hidden gems for workouts. The Golden State Warriors will enter the 2025 NBA Draft with only one pick, the 41st overall selection, which comes in the second round. They have an older, expensive team and could use some younger, cheap talent to fill out the roster. The Warriors have a history of snagging good players in the second round, including Draymond Green, Gilbert Arenas, and Monta Ellis. Golden State has worked out a number of intriguing prospects recently, including 3 more on Tuesday. Danny Emerson of the San Francisco Standard has reported that the Warriors recently worked out Duke's Sean James, Gonzaga's Ryan Nembhard, and Appalachian State's C.J. Huntley. Sean James started his career at Tulane, but he averaged 8.6 ppg, 4.2 rpg, and 2.9 apg in 39 games for the Duke Blue Devils, mostly in a starting role alongside Cooper Flagg, Common Maluak, and Tyrese Proctor. He also shot over 41% from 3 but in limited volume as a 6 feet 5 inches wing. Ryan Nembhard is the younger brother of Indiana Pacers guard Andrew Nembhard, a starter on a team in the NBA Finals. Ryan is 4 inches shorter than his brother, listed at 6 feet 0 inches, which may impact his potential role in the NBA. He averaged 11.7 ppg and 6.6 apg across his 4-year college career, which started at Creighton. He led the West Coast Conference in assists in his junior season and all of college basketball in assists his senior season, with 344 in 35 games. C.J. Huntley was a super senior at App State, and his production took a massive leap in his 5th season. He went from averaging 6.9 ppg across his first 4 seasons to 15.7 ppg and 8.1 rpg in his 5th, all while his efficiency mostly stayed the same. But he's a 6 feet 10 inches forward with 3-point range, something the Warriors would prioritize. Huntley is likely to be an undrafted prospect, as he's not even listed on some NBA draft big boards, but Nembhard and James could both be options for the Warriors in the second round. James is the 42nd prospect on Kevin O'Connor's big board on Yahoo, while Nembhard is 47th. Warriors can sign 3x All-Star in free agency under one shock condition. This doesn't make sense unless the Golden State Warriors will be looking to add shooting and more overall offense this offseason, with greater support needed for the star duo of Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler. On paper, Ben Simmons provides the opposite of that, having been the epitome of an unwilling shooter throughout his entire career, while becoming a complete non-scoring threat since his early days with the Philadelphia 76ers. Yet that hasn't stopped Simmons from being floated as a free agency option for the Warriors this offseason, with Ben Stinar of Sports Illustrated suggesting that the franchise must consider the 3x All-Star after ending this season with the Pacific rival LA Clippers. The Warriors should only consider Ben Simmons under one condition. The former number 1 overall pick could indeed be available on a minimum contract, with Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype reporting on Wednesday that the futures of Simmons and Amir Coffey at the Clippers are not certain. For all his weaknesses and health issues over recent years, Simmons is still a 6 feet 10 inches ball-handling playmaker, which could make him a backup option to both Curry and Draymond Green, according to Stinar. If the Warriors had a player such as Simmons, he could provide depth as a point guard behind Curry, who is going to turn 38 next season, Stinar wrote. With the size that Simmons brings, he also has the ability to help Draymond Green as a backup center defensively. The initial point remains, though, Golden State need more shooting rather than another player who's not going to be respected beyond the restricted circle. Simmons could still prove of value to a few teams around the league, but to be considered by the Warriors it would have to be under the condition of Green being traded beforehand. Having both on the roster should be considered needless given their overlapping skill set and subsequent inability to share the floor together. A previous, more athletic version of Simmons may have allowed it to work, but the player we've seen in recent years is far too limited. Simmons is still only 28 years old, but has played just 108 games in the past 4 seasons. He averaged just 2.9 points in 16.4 minutes across his 18 appearances with the Clippers, having averaged more rebounds, 3.8, and assists, 3.1. Given it would still be a shock to see Green traded in the coming weeks, the idea of the Warriors showing free agency interest in Simmons should be viewed as extremely unlikely. Warriors could reunite Jimmy Butler with $220 million ex-Timberwolves teammate, per writer. Pairing Jimmy Butler and Stephen Curry with another game-changing superstar could move the Golden State Warriors closer to championship contention. Although it may be a bit far-fetched, Blue Man Hoops Peter O'Keefe believes there's a slight chance the Dubs could reunite Butler with his ex-Minnesota Timberwolves teammate this summer. While it's far from a major feud between Butler and Karl-Anthony Towns, it's fair to say it's unlikely that Butler and Towns will ever be teammates in the NBA again, O'Keefe wrote Monday. That hasn't stopped suggestions of Golden State trading for the 5X All-Star, with Jonah Kubicek of NBA Analysis Network labeling the Bay as one of 3 possible destinations for Towns in the wake of the New York Knicks playoff elimination. Perhaps the Warriors could make it work, but the risk of doing so is far too substantial given both players are making in excess of $50 million next season. It's the contract and Butler history that ultimately makes Towns an implausible fit even if his skill set would otherwise make him an obvious trade target. The 29-year-old averaged 24.4 points, 12.8 rebounds, and 3.1 assists with the Knicks this season, having shot 52.6% from the floor and 42% from three-point range on nearly 5 attempts per game. Butler and Towns competed alongside each other in Minnesota from 2017 to 2018. With the two stars leading the way for the Timberwolves, the franchise secured 47 regular season wins and punched its ticket to the postseason. Unsurprisingly, the Houston Rockets made short work of the Timberwolves in the first round of the playoffs, but there was optimism that they could take a step forward in the 2018-19 season. However, after Butler grew weary of his teammates, Towns included, low effort and energy before the start of the 2018 training camp, the 6-time All-Star forward asked the organization for a trade. Butler received his wish in mid-November, as the Timberwolves traded him to the Philadelphia 76ers in a blockbuster deal. There's no question that Towns didn't make the best impression on Butler nearly a decade ago. When a star player manages to defeat most of the starting unit in a scrimmage while playing with fringe NBA players, it's time for immediate self-reflection. Still, regarding talent, Towns' ability to stretch the floor with his confident three-point stroke, explode to the rim when opponents overplay him and make winning plays in the final minutes of contests, could make a reunion with Butler work. Towns averaged a double-double on a Knicks team that reached the Eastern Conference Finals this season. The Kentucky product could soon be viewed as a potential trade target for Golden State. Warriors trade proposal sends shocking package to fill team need. This could be the right move, but the wrong price. As the Golden State Warriors enter their off-season, one of their primary missions is to find an upgrade at the center position, one that can provide defense and rebounding to a size-deficient rotation. In a mock trade featured on Fadeaway World, the Warriors would receive Onyeka Okongwu, the 24-year-old depth big man, from the Atlanta Hawks as their solution to this need, providing physicality and rebounding ability to the team. However, the proposed return package for Okongwu, which includes Buddy Hield, Moses Moody and a 2026 first-round pick, is much too hefty a price for the young center, and, with tradable assets such as Kuminga in play, Golden State should be able to target a more experienced and effective player to fill this need. Warriors need to set their sights higher than Okongwu. Okongwu, who was drafted 6th overall in the 2020 NBA draft, had a slow start to his career, struggling to find significant minutes behind Hawks center Clint Capella. However, in the last 3 seasons, he has steadily shown signs of improvement, taking on a larger and larger role within the Hawks rotation. Last season, Okongwu averaged 13.4 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 2.3 assists through 74 games, 40 of which he started. At 6 feet 8 inches, Okongwu is not necessarily among the largest centers in the league, but, at 235 pounds, he brings size and physicality that enables him to put up highly effective numbers on both the offensive and defensive glass. In their series against the Houston Rockets and Minnesota Timberwolves, this is something the Warriors struggled heavily with. Although they have players such as Kevin Looney and Tracy Jackson-Davis in the wings, neither was particularly effective against behemoths such as Steven Adams and Rudy Gobert, resulting in extra opportunities for their opponents' offenses. While Okongwu would immediately provide some sort of stabilization to this aspect of Golden State's game, his lack of three-point shooting ability would be a detriment to the team. Last season, on incredibly low volume, Okongwu shot just 32.4% from beyond the arc, and adding him to the team would bring another non-shooter into the rotation, something the Warriors cannot really afford. For the starting price of Moody, a young and effective 3-and-D wing, and Buddy Hield, a veteran player and sharpshooter, Golden State should be able to aim for a bigger target on the trade market, such as Nikola Vucevic or even someone like Kristaps Porzingis. While these players would certainly require a larger package, such deals would be more worth the cost. Therefore, while Okongwu would be a solid addition to this Warriors team, this trade proposal should give fans pause.